न्यूरो ज्ञान यूट्यूब चैनल पर आपका स्वागत है। लेटेस्ट वीडियोस के लिए अभी सब्सक्राइब करें।
Now I would like to invite Dr. Apurva Puranik. Dr. Apurva Puranik is an alumnus of the MGF Medical College Indore and AIIMS New Delhi, who's a neurologist with a brilliant academic record and many gold medals to his name. More than a clinician, he is a teacher designing innovative programs like neurology certificate courses for primary physicians and quizzes for medical students, taking neurology education to the grassroots. He has represented Indian neurology on international platforms, from being an interview with Dr. Oliver Sacks to being honored by the American Academy of Neurology for his advocacy and leadership. With numerous international awards, global recognition, research interest in physiology and neurolinguistics, and patient support initiatives, he remains a tireless advocate for making neurology a movement for awareness and empowerment. Over to you, sir.
आदरणीय डॉक्टर लोपा मेहता, डॉक्टर अविनाश सुपे, डॉक्टर रवि रमाकांतन, डॉक्टर संगीता रावत, सभागृहात उपस्थित इतर मान्यवर, विद्यार्थ्यांनो, विद्यार्थिनींनो, रेजिडेंट्स व मित्रांनो, आपल्या सर्वांना माझे अभिवादन, नमस्कार. आम्ही दोघे आज या प्रसंगी येथे उपस्थित राहून अत्यंत आनंदी आहोत. आमच्या आढळण्यामुळे पौराणिक अनेक जण मला महाराष्ट्रीयन समजतात. मी हिंदी भाषिक आहे. हिंदी माझी आई आहे. मराठी माझी लाडकी मावशी आहे. मी थोडीफार मराठी ऐकून आणि वाचून समजतो. मराठी चित्रपट आणि रंगमंच नाटकाचा आनंद अधून मधून घेत असतो. आज मी वैद्यकीय शिक्षण, वैद्यकीय व्यवसाय आणि मानविकी या विषयाच्या अंतःसंबंधावर चर्चा करणार आहे. कला, ललित कला आणि साहित्य या क्षेत्रात डॉक्टरांशी थोडेफार एक्सपोजर आणि इंटरॅक्शन वाढले तर अनेक पैलूंकरिता लाभदायी ठरेल. डॉक्टर, रुग्ण, त्याचे नातेवाईक, कलाकार, साहित्यिक आणि व्यापक समाज सर्वांसाठी. I take this opportunity to remember Professor Dr. Sunil Pandya sir. He was the patron for this award. He and Dr. Ravi have been my guide and supporter in a big way. Dr. Sunil Pandya came down to Indore for giving away the first year's award of National Medical Humanities. After 2 or 3 awards, then his health didn't permit him to actively be involved into the activities. But I pay my tribute and homage to Dr. Pandya sir. I have fond memories of the institution which my wife might be telling a bit later. So I will come directly to the subject. Down arrow, yeah. Yeah. So medical humanities has many faces, and I would be devoting a little bit more time on the most salient facet of it, that is the narrative stories. Sir, you people, Dr. Ravi, Dr. Sangeeta, are you able to see that on screen there? Yeah. See. There is a great divide, unfortunately. As Rudyard Kipling said, "Oh, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet." But that shouldn't be so. The great divide was also referred to by a famous philosopher, Charles Percy Snow, in one of his famous lectures, where it said that a gulf of mutual incomprehension has opened between the literary intellectuals on the humanities side and the physical scientists. And this division is hindering the progress. So this difference should not be there. And that's why this is our premise for medical humanities or health humanities. The arts and science need not be strangers and contradictory. Medicine and neurology and humanities are likewise complementary. In fact, the evolution of Homo species from Homo australopithecus to Homo erectus to Homo neanderthalis to Homo sapiens. If you go for the fossil records, gradually the cranial volume capacity has been increasing, and so is the complexity of the artifacts created by human beings, the artistic artifacts. So the art and human brain capacity are intricately related, and cognitive abilities for art and literature are very much related. I will give some examples of neurology in arts and literature. These examples are without any conscious effort, anayas, and later I will give some examples of sayas or with conscious effort. For example, we can search large number of paintings by artists. The artists were not aware of any neurological or medical condition, but it so happens that now we are able to see, oh, this is a neurological condition, this is a medical condition, and I will give you some examples. Look at this Renaissance art. Look at the baby in the mother's lap, and look at the great toe. The great toe is slightly lifted up while the other toes are touching the hand. This is the physiological Babinski sign in an infant. Infants have physiological upgoing toe, and in neurology we call it pathological. And look at the other painting by Raphael, a famous painting, Transfigura Zone, and look at the corner on the right lower corner. A boy is having epileptic fit and the father is holding, and Jesus is coming to salvage him. So that's a painting from Christian mythology. You might have read David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and we neurologists are aware of the phenomena of deja vu, which comes as an aura in many epilepsy patients, but deja vu can occur in physiologically in healthy people also. And what a beautiful description. Charles Dickens was not a neurologist. He didn't know anything. He said, we have all some experience of a feeling which comes over us occasionally of what we are saying and doing, having been said or done before in a remote time, of our having been surrounded dim ages ago by same faces, objects and circumstances, of our knowing perfectly well what will be said next as if we suddenly remembered it. This phenomena occurs physiologically to many healthy people, but it occurs more commonly in patients with epilepsy, the phenomena of deja vu. Dostoevsky has described many symptoms of epilepsy. I will not go into the detail. He himself suffered from experiential seizures, and in many of his novels, he has put his symptoms into the character of his novel. So one of the characters is Prince Mikin, and he is describing the aura through him. Saint Paul in Christian history, there is a story that he was going to Damascus to punish the Christians there. He was a Jew. He was anti-Christian. And something happened. He gets a bright light. That was a visual aura from occipital lobe. And in the post-ictal, and he fell down on the ground. He lost his vision. And the post-ictal loss of vision was restored in 3 days. And after that, when he regained the consciousness, he was converted to Christianity. So that's the story in Bible about Saint Paul. And that is one of the famous paintings about Saint Paul falling on the ground with his Caesar. These are all examples of anayas, without conscious effort. There are many examples of neurological diseases in literature by Shakespeare. One of the famous line in Hamlet is, there is a method in his madness. So it's not a random thing. Anton Chekhov, Dostoevsky, Sherlock Holmes, Leonardo da Vinci. Famous Sanskrit poet Magh has described the comparison between epilepsy and ocean. He says both are lying on the ground, both are making noise, both are waving their arms, and both are frothing at mouth. This is how he is giving the simile of epilepsy. Some of you might remember this serial, Mungeri Lal Ke Haseen Sapne, about 20 years back. And if you recall, in the beginning of episode, Mungeri Lal, the Raghuvir Yadav character, would have twitchings on one half of the face, and he would go into a trance. Again, this is a psychomotor seizure or temporal lobe seizure, or what we call as experiential seizure. The epilepsy classifications keep on changing. And during that episode, something happens. In fact, Shyam Benegal, who is the director, he himself didn't know. I had an opportunity to talk to him. He said, I don't know, somebody gave me the script and I directed it. Anyone who gave him the script must have been knowledgeable about the neurology. Antaske Parijan is a collection of stories by a Marathi author, Dr. Bhavan Mahajan, a surgeon who worked in Maharashtra Health Services, and he has written clinical tales, patient stories in a very emotional, poignant manner, and I have read the Hindi translation. Art and neurology can be referred to in the paintings with reference to color blindness. For example, this is a painting, an abstract art. Gradually it is disintegrating, and gone. There are progressive examples of deterioration of artist skill in a patient with frontotemporal dementia. From 1996, you can see the ear downward. However, opposite is also seen occasionally. In some patients with frontotemporal dementia, for the initial few months to years, there can be enhancement of artistic skills, as if some part of the artistic brain which was otherwise inhibited by the dominant left hemisphere, it has now been released. So a release phenomena of art can occur in some of the artists. There are many similes and metaphors, muhavare, kahavatein. For example, how come Guljar is able to write a line, हमने देखी है इन आंखों की महकती खुशबू? How do we see खुशबू? We don't, but it's an example of synesthesia. Synesthesia means if you stimulate one sensory organ, the person feels the sensation in some other modality. And this is because of connections between the parietal lobe and occipital lobe and temporal lobe and olfactory lobe. There are connections. These connections are very prominent in the embryonic life. During the early childhood, many of these anatomical connections are pruned. And that's why we are not having synesthesia. It occurs physiologically in about 5% of the people. They say, when I listen this particular sound, a particular image appears before my eye. So these are synesthesia. And it is also argued that the authors, the literary people, they have less pruning in their brain. That's why they are able to give these type of similes. An exhibition was curated by me during the annual conference of Neurological Society of India in 2010, and I used this line from Maithili Sharan Gupta, a famous Hindi author, and his Mahakavya is called Saket, about the story of Ram, and he has written, राम तुम्हारा चरित स्वयं ही काव्य है, कोई कवि बन जाए सहज संभाव्य है. I paraphrased it. ब्रेन तुम स्वयं इतने सुंदर हो, कोई कलाकार बन जाए सहज संभाव्य है. And this exhibition was full of such images. If you put these images in art gallery and don't give any captions and no information, people will say, oh, what a fine abstract art, what an art. So brain structure itself is so beautiful. It's an object of art. So these are some of the examples from that exhibition. Then some of the examples with conscious effort. And for this, I will give the story of 1992 when I invited a group of artists at Indore. And I talked to them about epilepsy for 1 hour. Not so much the technical aspects of epilepsy, but the social and emotional and stigma and myth and all, discrimination, all those aspects of epilepsy. And I said, okay, now you have heard about epilepsy somewhat. So this is one of the painting by one senior artist, another. So this is an example of epilepsy and art. My patients with migraine come to me, and some of them, about 10% of them, have visual aura. The visual aura is a warning symptom before the migraine headache. And these auras can be visual in about 10%. Mostly these visual auras are faint, dimness of vision, etc. But in a small percentage, they can be artistic and colorful. And I request my patients, and some of them can do, and these are some of the paintings done by patients with migraine and aura. This is how they describe their vomiting, their headache, and their hallucinations, and their suffering, the dissolution of their head. So migraine with aura. I would like you people to read these two small novels by Alexander Luria. He was a great neuropsychologist, and he has written the first two novels in neurology. The one was The Mind of a Mnemonist, and the other was The Man with a Shattered World. Mnemonist is someone who has very, very good memory, that he remembers every event of the life, every day, every minute. Don't think it's a boon, it's a curse. That is the gist of the story. His life was miserable, the mind of a mnemonist. And the other story was of a soldier who suffered severe head injuries to the brain and his many cognitive functions were gone. So that was the story of a man with a shattered world. My favorite author is Dr. Oliver Sacks. Myself and Dr. Neerja had an opportunity and he gave us a 2-hour interview and she recorded the video and stills. He is my role model for writing clinical tales or stories. And in that interview, he told us that Hippocrates 2005 years ago, he spoke of pathographies, that means clinical tales, Marich Kathaएं, patient stories. And he said that these pathographies have a paradoxical power to lift the veil to reveal the normally hidden structure of body and mind. These stories can tell you so much. And Dr. Oliver Sacks told me that the power to describe in a rich manner human clinical tales, which was very common up to 19th century, has been lost in 20th and 21st century. It must be revived. He reminded me of Charcot and he reminded me of Sigmund Freud, how beautifully they narrated the stories of their patients. And he was feeling sorrow that in the current era of objectivity, we are losing the subjective importance of subjectivity. Why is it that objectivity is always considered superior to subjectivity? Why we deride and degrade, oh, this is only anecdotal, this is not evidence-based, this has not been proved by randomized controlled trial. But subjective is also important. And he told me, Dr. Oliver Sacks, that a physician should play multiple roles. He should be a naturalist as well as a physician, a theorist as well as a dramatist, a scientist as well as a romantic. And he told me that modern case histories allude to a subject in a cursory phrase. Trisomic, albino, female of 21. Who? A rat or a human being? We must deepen our case stories to the level of a narrative. And for this, I follow Rita Sharon. She is a professor of medicine in New York. And she says, evidence-based medicine is okay, but we should have narrative evidence-based medicine. And she has a lot of publications and lot of videos on this subject. So we need to foster narrative skills. Each patient has a unique story. Doctor is a part of a story. Both influence each other. One should know how to be into the shoes of someone else, and we should encourage patients and relatives to write stories. And we, the doctors, must encourage ourselves to write stories. We are in a vantage position. हमसे ज्यादा अच्छे कथानक किसको मिलेंगे? Who will get the best scripts to write the stories? I also quote Diane Ackerman. She is a science writer and she has written this novel about the story of her husband, a stroke, a marriage, and the language of healing. Her husband suffered a massive stroke and right hemiplegia and aphasia. And motor power recovered fairly well, but the speech took a longer time to recover. And the story of a struggle over a period of 3 to 4 years that has been narrated in a beautiful manner by wife author. Husband is also an author. And the story is, the title is 100 Names for Love. Why? Because during that period of aphasia, her husband, he was talking in a halting manner and they replaced the word with some other word. So when he wanted to say to his wife, I love you, he would say, I love something word, some other word. So he has used 100 options for the word love. When he wanted to say love, this phenomena in aphasiology is called paraphasia. When you want to say some word, but you utter some other word. This happens in aphasia because of brain damage. It's a wonderful book. So getting inspired from these authors, I have written about 20 medical tales myself. These are the I have written all them in Hindi. These are the English translations of the titles, and these are the neurological conditions about which they are related. So the only one I have translated in English, which was published in an American journal. I also say that humanities are good. I am all for here. I have come only for that purpose. This award has been initiated for highlighting the importance of humanities. But at the end of the day, I am a science bhakt. I am a science bhakt. Knowing very well that it's an oxymoron, knowing very well the word bhakt is carrying a pejorative meaning nowadays, but I will say science is supreme and necessary. If not science, what? Magic? Miracle? prayer, voodoo. And suppose you are given 4 choices. There is a doctor whose science is bad and his humanistic sensibilities are also bad. You will never choose him. There is a doctor whose science is good and his humanistic sensibilities are also good. Certainly you will choose. The problem comes with the bottom 2 choices. There is a doctor with good science but bad humanistic sensibility, and there is another doctor with good humanistic sensibilities but bad science. आप किसको चुनेंगे? The one with good science or one with good humanistic sensibilities but bad science? Anybody? Good science? Good science or good humanistic sense? His science may be bad. These are the options. So I think science is important. And the evolution of science and the progress of science has led to science envy and neuron envy among the people of humanities, among the people of theology, and among the people of spirituality. Look what happens. One by one, the sacredly held beliefs are crumbling with the onslaught of science. Newton started it when he described the laws of motion and gravity. Kepler and Copernicus described that the earth is not the center of the universe. The earth is rotating around the sun. Darwin destroyed another fort when he said that human beings are part of the biological evolution, not a special creature of God. Einstein broke another citadel by theory of relativity, and now the science, and particularly the neuroscience, is on the cusp of destroying the last citadel, the bridle of consciousness in the human brain. I hope it does so. But the people on the humanities side should not be envious. That is my saying. This is the irony of half handshake. I think I jumped one slide, just a minute. I just forgot to tell why I chose this slide. When Newton described the physics of rainbow, he said that when the sunlights are passing through the suspended droplets of water in the atmosphere, the prismatic action occurs and the 7 colors appear. At the same time, John Keats was very angry with Newton. John Keats, the famous English poet, who is famous for his line, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." He said, "Oh Newton, what have you done? You have destroyed the beauty of rainbow. It is to be painted, it is to be described in lyrics and all those things, and you are going to the nitty-gritty of physics. This is reductionism." And I say, reductionism is not bad. Both are necessary. When we describe the physics of Newton, that doesn't preclude us from enjoying the beauty of rainbow. Both are simultaneously possible. So this is the irony of half handshake. Many doctors and medical students do enjoy and cherish, create works of art and literature, and that's why we are here together. Because we cherish the arts, because we cherish the humanities. Sadly, the contrary is not true. We need to reach out to academia in humanities and artists and authors and get them interested in science. So it's in the half handshake. We scientists are open to literature and arts. The artists and literature people are not so open to science. That's an irony. We should try to engage them. And our neuro prefix is so fecund. Look at the connections. On one side, there are medical connections, neuroanatomy, neuropathology, neuropharmacology, neurophysiology. But then there are many other connections on the humanities side. Neuroeconomics, neurolinguistics, neurophilosophy, neurosociology, neuroarts, neuroaesthetics. And these are not artificial connections. I can vouch all these associations, all these societies are having their annual conferences and they are having annual journals. There is a neuroaesthetic society. There is a musicology society, neuromusicology. They have their journals, their conferences. So neuro is the most fecund of all prefixes. No other branch of medicine has. And why the neuro prefix is so fecund? Because humans are social animals. Brain is the seat of socializations. Hence, no wonder neuro is so fond of making affiliations which are cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, and this fecundity of neurons starts from the synaptic level. Each neuron makes connections with hundreds of other neurons. So this is the fecundity of neuron. So at the brain level, there is the fecundity of neuro with other branches, including humanities. So I think this is my last slide. Emily Dickinson has written this poem, and I have done the Hindi Bhavanuvad or Kavyanuvad also, but I won't read the Hindi version. I will just read the English lines. The brain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side, the one the other will contain with ease and you beside. The brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb as a sponge's buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ if they do as syllable for sound. Thank you very much.